Welcome back to CrimePod Castle's Twisted Love Series, episode 19.
Oh,
Today, we're diving deep into a case
okay.
that gripped the tech hub of Bengaluru, India, back in 2020.
Uh-huh.
It's a story where love took a dark turn.
Oh, wow.
A twisted tale of ambition,
Yeah.
betrayal, and a tragic loss of life.
You always think you know someone, right?
Right. And this case really shows how complex, seemingly ordinary relationships can be.
Oh, absolutely.
So on the surface, we have Rahul Mehta, a 29-year-old software engineer, living his dream in Bengaluru's booming tech scene. But as we dig deeper, we uncover a web of deceit and jealousy that ultimately led to his demise.
It's true, and it's important to remember that Rahul was more than just a headline. You know, he was a bright, ambitious young man with a promising future ahead of him.
Right.
He was known for his hard work, his easygoing nature, and his ability to light up a room.
Sounds like a great guy.
His colleagues and friends were devastated by his loss.
It's a stark reminder that these kinds of tragedies can touch anyone, anywhere.
Yeah, for sure.
So let's unpack the details of this case, starting with Rahul's relationship with Priya.
Okay.
They seem like the perfect couple, but as we know, appearances can be deceiving.
Absolutely. Priya was a marketing professional, and she and Rahul seemed to have it all. They were young, successful, and outwardly happy, but beneath the surface, their relationship was strained by arguments and trust issues.
Oh, really?
Yeah, like many couples, they struggled to balance demanding careers with the need for personal connection and stability.
So this is where the cracks in their relationship start to show, right?
Yeah.
The arguments, the doubts, the unspoken anxieties, all of it created a breeding ground for something more sinister to take root.
Yes, and that something was Priya's rekindled relationship with her ex-boyfriend, Karan.
Oh, no.
It's a classic love triangle scenario. And as Priya's feelings for Karan grew, she found herself caught in a web of deceit, juggling two relationships and fueling a dangerous dynamic.
So we have this complex emotional landscape, a powder keg waiting to explode.
Right.
What happened next? How did this love triangle turn deadly?
Well, the turning point came on September 15th, 2020.
Okay.
Rahul was found dead in his apartment.
Oh, my gosh.
The scene was brutal, with multiple stab wounds indicating a violent struggle.
Wow.
It was clear that this was no random act of violence. This was personal.
A chilling discovery that must have sent shockwaves through Rahul's circle in the Bengaluru community.
It did. The initial assumption was robbery.
Uh-huh.
But as the police delved deeper, they uncovered inconsistencies that pointed to a more complex and disturbing motive.
Okay, so let's talk about the investigation.
Sure.
How did the Bengaluru police unravel this tangled web of relationships and deceit?
Well, they faced a real challenge.
Yeah.
They had a popular, well-liked victim,
Right.
a seemingly perfect girlfriend, and a crime scene that initially suggested a random act of violence.
Right.
But their meticulous approach and attention to detail paid off.
So where did they start? What were the first clues that suggested this was more than a simple robbery?
Well, Priya, being the last person to see Rahul alive,
Yeah.
naturally became a central figure in the investigation.
Okay.
However, her initial account of the events leading up to Rahul's death was riddled with inconsistencies.
Oh, really?
Yeah, these discrepancies raised red flags for the investigators, prompting them to dig deeper.
It's like those inconsistencies were cracks in a carefully constructed facade, hinting at a darker truth lurking beneath the surface.
Exactly, and as they dug deeper, those cracks widened. Phone records and messages revealed Priya's ongoing communication with Karan,
Interesting.
placing him squarely back in the picture.
Ah, so the love triangle becomes a focal point of the investigation.
Yes,
The police must have realized they were dealing with a much more complex scenario than they initially thought.
absolutely, and things took an even more incriminating turn when surveillance footage placed Karan at Rahul's apartment complex on the night of the murder.
The evidence was mounting against them.
Right.
So how did Priya and Karan react to this mounting pressure? Did they try to maintain their innocence?
Well, under the weight of the evidence, Priya's carefully constructed facade crumbled.
Uh-oh.
She confessed, revealing that a jealous and enraged Karan had attacked Rahul.
Wow, a dramatic turning point in the investigation.
It was.
So was Priya claiming to be an innocent bystander, caught in the crossfire of Karan's rage?
While Priya tried to downplay her role, claiming she never intended for things to escalate to violence,
Okay.
her confession revealed a much more intricate involvement.
Interesting.
She admitted to orchestrating the confrontation that led to the attack
Wow.
and helping Karan flee the scene.
So she was painting herself as a victim of circumstance, But the police clearly weren't buying it.
No, not at all.
They saw her as a key player in this tragic drama.
You got it. Her actions, her manipulations, her deliberate fueling of Karan's jealousy, all of it painted a very different picture.
Right.
The investigators recognized that Priya, despite not physically committing the murder, was instrumental in creating the circumstances that led to Rahul's death.
This is where the legal concept of abetting a crime comes into play, right?
Exactly.
Even though she didn't wield the weapon, her actions contributed directly to the crime's occurrence.
Precisely, and this distinction would become crucial in the trial that followed. But before we get into that, let's pause here and pick up the conversation in part 2 of our deep dive into the Bengaluru Techie murder.
Okay.
We'll delve deeper into the trial, the evidence presented, and the arguments put forth by both the prosecution and the defense.
It sounds like things are about to get really interesting.
Oh, yeah.
Join us in part 2 as we unpack the legal battle that followed.
Definitely.
And explore the complexities of assigning culpability in a case driven by such tangled emotions. See you there.
See you there. Welcome back to CrimePod Castle. We're continuing our deep dive into the Bengaluru Techie murder, a case that's a stark reminder of how quickly love can turn toxic.
Yeah, it's really good.
Leading to devastating consequences.
Last time we left off with Priya's confession and the police uncovering the complex dynamics of this love triangle. Now, let's move on to the trial. This is where the legal system had to grapple with the tangled emotions and motivations that fueled this tragedy.
The trial began in early 2021.
Okay.
And immediately captured national attention.
Wow.
The prosecution set out to prove that this wasn't just a crime of passion, but a calculated act fueled by jealousy and manipulation.
Right.
They meticulously presented a mountain of evidence, forensic data placing Karan at the crime scene.
Okay.
Priya's incriminating text messages, and of course, her confession.
But listener, remember what we discussed about abetting a crime?
Yeah.
The prosecution had to convince the jury that Priya, even though she didn't physically stab Rahul, was equally responsible for his death.
That's right. They argued that Priya, by intentionally fueling Karan's jealousy and orchestrating the confrontation, had essentially set the stage for the murder.
So she was an accomplice.
They painted her as a master manipulator, playing both men against each other to satisfy her own emotional needs.
So what was the defense's strategy? How did they try to counter this narrative of a cold, calculating manipulator?
Priya's defense team took a different approach.
Okay.
Seeking to separate her actions from Karan's and portray her as a victim herself.
Oh, wow.
Caught in a web of her own making.
Okay.
They argued that Priya never intended for Rahul to be harmed, that she was merely trying to navigate a difficult emotional situation.
So they were acknowledging her role in the love triangle.
Yes.
But trying to downplay the severity of her actions.
Exactly. They tried to portray her as a woman who made some bad decisions, perhaps acted recklessly, but never with the intent to cause harm.
Right.
They argued that Karan, driven by his own uncontrollable jealousy, was solely responsible for the violence that ensued.
Essentially, they were shifting the blame.
Yeah.
Saying that Karan's actions were a result of his individual character flaws, not Priya's influence.
Right.
But what about Karan's defense?
Well,
what was their strategy?
Karan's lawyers went for a classic crime of passion defense, arguing that he was driven to a temporary state of madness by Priya's perceived betrayal.
So, temporary insanity.
They attempted to evoke sympathy from the jury, painting a picture of a man devastated by heartbreak, driven to an act he would never commit in a rational state of mind.
So, two very different defense strategies, both attempting to minimize the culpability of their clients.
Yes.
The jury had a lot to consider.
Right.
What ultimately swayed their decision?
The prosecution's case was strong.
Yeah.
They meticulously laid out a timeline of events, backed by hard evidence, showing a pattern of manipulation and deliberate escalation on Priya's part. They argued that her actions, while not physically violent, created the context, the motive, the very opportunity for Karan's rage to turn deadly, and the jury agreed.
What was the final verdict?
In 2022, after weeks of intense testimony and deliberation, Karan was found guilty of murder and sentenced to life imprisonment. Priya, while not directly responsible for the killing, was convicted of abetting the crime.
And what about her sentence? Was the jury convinced by the defense's attempts to minimize her role?
They weren't entirely swayed.
Okay.
Priya received a 10-year sentence, a significant punishment that reflected the gravity of her involvement in this tragic chain of events.
This raises a fascinating question, listener.
Yeah.
Where do we draw the line between intent and consequence? Priya didn't physically harm Rahul, but her actions undeniably contributed to his death.
That's the complexity of this case.
Yeah.
And it sparked a lot of debate. Some argued that Priya's sentence was too lenient,
Right.
that her manipulative actions deserved harsher punishment. Others felt that the focus should be on preventing such tragedies from happening in the first place.
This case really forces us to confront the gray areas of the legal system.
Yeah.
The challenge of assigning blame when multiple individuals contribute to a tragic outcome.
It does, and it highlights the importance of understanding the subtle signs of a toxic relationship, not just for those involved, but for their wider circle of friends and family who might be able to intervene before things escalate to violence. But before we delve into those broader implications, let's take a break and come back for the final part of our deep dive, where we'll explore the aftermath of the Bengaluru Techie murder, the lasting impact on the community, and the crucial lessons we can all learn from this heartbreaking case.
Welcome back to CrimePod Castle. We're wrapping up our deep dive into the Bengaluru Techie murder, a case that's not just about crime and punishment, but about the complex interplay of relationships, choices, and consequences.
It really is, and it's a case that forces us to ask some uncomfortable questions about our own lives, about the relationships we cultivate, and the signs we might be missing.
We've walked through the investigation, the trial, the verdicts, but now, listener, let's shift our focus to the aftermath. What happened after the dust settled? How did this case impact the Bengaluru community?
Well, the Bengaluru Techie murder wasn't just a tabloid sensation. It sent ripples of shock and unease through the city, especially in the tech community where Rahul was a well-known and respected figure.
So it wasn't just about the individuals involved. It became a shared experience, a collective trauma for the community.
Exactly. People started questioning their own relationships, looking for those subtle red flags they might have missed.
Right.
It sparked conversations about healthy communication boundaries and the dangers of unchecked jealousy and possessiveness.
It's like this case forced everyone to hold a mirror up to their own lives, to examine their own relationships with a newfound awareness.
Exactly. And this introspection wasn't limited to personal relationships. It extended to the workplace, to friendships, to family dynamics.
Wow.
It made people more aware of the power imbalances that can exist in any relationship and the importance of recognizing and addressing them.
This case also sparked a debate about the role of the community in preventing such tragedies. Could something have been done to intervene? Were there warning signs that were overlooked?
That's a crucial question, and it's one that weighs heavily on many people's minds. There's often a sense of, if only someone had noticed, if only someone had spoken up, if only someone had intervened.
It's heartbreaking to think about.
It is.
This case highlights the responsibility we all share in creating a culture where people feel comfortable seeking help, where vulnerability is seen as a strength, and where we don't shy away from those difficult conversations about mental health and relationship challenges.
You're absolutely right. It's about fostering an environment of support, not judgment. It's about recognizing that we all have a role to play in preventing these tragedies.
So as we reach the end of this deep dive, listener, what are the key takeaways? What can we learn from this heartbreaking case?
Well, the Bengaluru Techie murder is a tragic reminder of the complexities of human relationships. It underscores the importance of open communication, healthy boundaries, and the need to recognize the subtle warning signs of a toxic relationship.
It's so important.
It is.
It also highlights the devastating consequences that can arise when jealousy and possessiveness are left unchecked. And perhaps most importantly, it reminds us of our collective responsibility to create a culture of support and intervention, to reach out to those who might be struggling, and to speak up when we see something amiss.
You got it. It's a reminder that silence can be deadly, but that a single voice, a single act of courage can make all the difference.
The Bengaluru Techie murder is a story that will stay with us long after the headlines fade. But it's also a story that can empower us to make positive changes in our own lives and communities.
Right.
Let's honor Rahul's memory by committing to healthier relationships, open communication, and a culture of support. Thank you for joining us on this deep dive into the dark side of love. Remember, listener, you're not alone. If you or someone you know is struggling with a toxic relationship or mental health challenges, please reach out for help. There are resources available, people who care and hope for a brighter future. And don't forget to follow and subscribe to CrimePod Castle for more deep dives into the world's most captivating and thought-provoking true crime cases. Until next time, stay safe, stay informed, and keep those critical thinking caps on.